Operation Swift Victory, planetary date 5893.6, NGC 4414 billion, General Vrax dictated, his four upper appendages adjusting the holographic display, while his lower ones tapped impatiently against the metal floor of their camouflaged command center. I, Supreme Tactical Commander Vrax of the Galatean Dominion, have personally selected this backwater mud ball for our demonstration of superior Galatean military technology. He paused the recording, squinting through his compound eyes at the primitive human outpost barely visible through the dense purple foliage. What a joke. 3 prefabricated structures, a communications array that might as well have been built with sticks and stones, and a landing pad that couldn't accommodate anything larger than their pathetic shuttlecraft. Resume recording, Vrax barked. Today marks the beginning of the end for humanity's expansion into Sector 8. Our elite infiltration team has established the perfect ambush position completely undetected, I might add, despite the human's supposed advanced sensor technology. Major Klaatu, the squad's tactical officer, suppressed a buzzing laugh from where he crouched beside the monitoring equipment. Their sensors couldn't detect a supernova if it happened in their backyard. Exactly, Major. Vrax's mandibles clicked in appreciation. For the record, I am accompanied by the finest special operatives the Dominion has produced, Major Klaatu, whose infiltration of the Arcturus mining colony resulted in its bloodless surrender, Lieutenant Blix, whose expertise in xenobiology has been crucial in developing our latest weapon, and Specialist Dorn, whose enthusiasm for testing new methods of subduing enemy combatants borders on the concerning. Dorn looked up from the vial of pale green liquid he was examining, his facial tentacles curling into what passed for a smile in his species. I prefer the term passionately devoted to science, General. Call it whatever helps you sleep during the cold cycle, Specialist. Vrax turned back to the recorder. Our mission is straightforward. Capture the human outpost using our newly developed neurotoxin, document its effects, and return with prisoners for further study. The Supreme Command believes this compound will revolutionize our conquest efforts, allowing us to subdue resistance without damaging valuable infrastructure. Lieutenant Blix adjusted her breathing apparatus, a necessity for her aquatic evolved physiology in this dry environment. General, preliminary tests indicate the toxin should render humans unconscious within minutes of exposure, with total paralysis following shortly after. No permanent damage unless exposure exceeds 12 hours. Which is more consideration than these hairless primates deserve, Vrax added, not bothering to hide his contempt. Frankly, Issei, I don't understand why we're wasting such sophisticated methods on creatures whose greatest technological achievement seems to be inventing increasingly ridiculous names for caffeinated beverages. Klaatu snorted. Have you seen their combat armor? You might as well be wearing cooking foil. Their fragility is well documented, Vrax continued for the record. Even minor atmospheric variations cause them respiratory distress. They require constant hydration and nutrition. A slight change in ambient temperature can impair their cognitive functions. And yet the High Command insists we treat this operation with the utmost seriousness. He zoomed the holographic display to focus on the outpost's water purification system. We will introduce the compound into their water supply. When the humans are incapacitated, we will document everything for the scientific division, secure the location, and signal for the main force to land. The Dominion will have its foothold in this sector by the next planetary rotation. Vrax paused, his mandibles spreading in the Galatean expression of supreme confidence. If there's one thing we can count on, it's the predictable weakness of human physiology. This will be the easiest mission of our distinguished careers. How spectacularly wrong he would turn out to be. Surveillance update, sir, Major Klaatu announced, his taloned fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Our sensors have identified only one human currently active at the outpost, but the others appear to be off-site, likely conducting survey operations in the eastern sector. Vrax's compound eyes glittered with anticipation as he moved to the display. Perfect. One test subject is all we need for the initial demonstration. The hologram shifted to show magnified footage of a human female in combat fatigues, methodically checking the perimeter defenses. She moved with a practiced efficiency that even Vrax had to acknowledge showed professional training. Facial recognition confirms this is Sergeant Maggie Rivera, Lieutenant Blix reported, reading from her datapad. Alliance Military, 42nd Expeditionary Unit. They call her Havoc. Havoc. Specialist Dorn's tentacles curled in amusement as he continued preparing the neurotoxin. What an absurdly dramatic designation. Do they think naming themselves after destructive concepts makes them more intimidating? Blix continued scrolling through the intelligence file. Actually, her record is quite extensive. Decorated 3 times for exceptional valor, survived the Proxima Centauri conflict, was apparently the sole survivor when separatists attacked the Ganymede research station. A fortunate human, nothing more, Vrax dismissed with a wave of his upper appendage. Luck is often mistaken for skill among primitive species. Sir, Blix hesitated, her breathing apparatus wheezing slightly as she examined more data. There's a note here about her participating in some kind of experimental combat enhancement program. A code named Phoenix Protocol. Details are classified even in the files we accessed. Enhancements? Vrax scoffed, leaning over to examine the file himself. What could they possibly enhance? Their pathetic musculature, their limited sensory range, their absurdly inefficient digestive system? Klaatu joined in the mockery. Perhaps they've finally figured out how to grow a useful exoskeleton instead of that ridiculous soft exterior they call skin. Whatever enhancements they've attempted, Vrax declared, they remain fundamentally flawed organisms. Run a physiological analysis on her current readings. Dorn activated the bioscanner and within moments projected the results. Standard human vital signs. Body temperature 37 degrees Celsius, pulse 68 beats per minute. Respiratory rate normal. She's the very model of average human health, which makes her perfect for our toxin test. See? Vrax gestured triumphantly. Nothing special. The toxin is ready, General, Dorn announced, holding up the vial of green liquid with a dramatic flourish. I've calibrated it specifically for human biology. It'll bind to their hemoglobin, temporarily blocking oxygen transport while simultaneously affecting their primitive nervous system. They really did themselves a disservice evolving with such an accessible bloodstream. How long until full effect? Vrax inquired. For a human her size. About 3 minutes after ingestion, Dorn replied confidently. She'll experience progressive weakness, disorientation, and then unconsciousness. Really, it's more humane than they deserve. Did you hear about the human diplomat who needed 5 separate atmospheric adjustments just to attend a 1-hour meeting on Centaurus Prime? Klaatu chuckled. They had to keep wheeling in different machines just so he wouldn't collapse. Or that ridiculous ritual they perform daily, what do they call it? Blix joined in. Coffee consumption? Apparently they're completely non-functional without it. Vrax watched as the human sergeant completed her patrol circuit and headed toward the water filtration system. His mandibles spread in anticipation. She's approaching the target area. Dorn, prepare to introduce the compound on my mark. Let's show High Command why the Galatean Dominion will always triumph over such fundamentally defective organisms. Target is approaching water filtration unit. Klaatu reported, his voice barely above a whisper, despite the fact that their stealth field would prevent any sound from reaching human ears. Vrax watched through the high-resolution scanner as Sergeant Rivera completed her inspection of the perimeter sensors and paused beside the outpost's compact water system. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Initiate compound release, Vrax ordered. Dorn's tentacles danced across his control pad, introducing neurotoxin into filtration bypass now. The compound is colorless and odorless to human senses. She won't detect a thing. They watched in collective anticipation as the human pulled out a canteen and filled it directly from the system's drinking water tap. Rivera took a long drink, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and continued her patrol. "Toxin successfully delivered," Dorn announced with undisguised glee. "Now we wait, though not for long." Back in the command center, the aliens monitored Rivera's biosigns closely. After approximately 90 seconds, the scanners detected the first changes. Heart rate increasing by 15%, Blix reported, a blood pressure showing mild elevation. Chemical markers indicate the toxin has entered the bloodstream. "Excellent," Vrax began recording again. "Operation Swift Victory, Phase 1 complete. The human subject has ingested the compound and initial physiological responses are being detected. We anticipate full incapacitation within the next 2 minutes." Klaatu made a celebratory buzzing sound. "Should we prepare the containment unit?" "Not yet," Vrax cautioned. "Let's observe the full progression." On the display, Rivera had stopped walking. She frowned, rubbed her forehead, and shook her head as if trying to clear it. "Classic early symptoms," Dorn explained proudly. "Cognitive functions beginning to impair. Next comes the muscle weakness, then coordination loss, and finally..." Rivera suddenly swayed, put a hand against a nearby tree to steady herself, and took another swig from her canteen. "What is she doing?" "That will only accelerate the toxin spread," Dorn exclaimed. "Perhaps humans instinctively seek hydration when distressed," Blix suggested. They watched as Rivera's biosigns continued to fluctuate. But instead of collapsing as expected, she merely looked annoyed. She blinked several times, rolled her shoulders, and performed a series of deep breathing exercises. "Something's wrong," Vrax said, the first hint of concern entering his voice. "She should be unconscious by now." "I don't understand," Dorn muttered, pulling up his toxicology data and frantically reviewing his calculations. The dosage was calibrated for a human twice her mass. She should be completely paralyzed. On screen, Rivera yawned widely, stretched her arms over her head, and then, inexplicably, chuckled to herself. "Is she laughing?" Klaatu asked incredulously. "Impossible." Dorn's tentacles writhed in agitation. "The neurotoxin targets their central nervous system. She can't possibly be functioning normally." They watched in disbelief as Rivera casually checked her wrist device, presumably a chronometer, then surveyed her surroundings before making a decision that left them all speechless. She sat down with her back against the tree, positioned her weapon across her lap, crossed her arms, and appeared to deliberately close her eyes. "Is she sleeping?" Blix whispered, her voice a mixture of fascination and horror. "Combat nap," Klaatu corrected numbly. "It's a technique human soldiers use during extended operations. They take short, regulated rest periods to maintain combat effectiveness." "That's not possible," Dorn insisted, his voice rising to an uncharacteristic pitch. "The toxin doesn't cause drowsiness. It causes paralysis, respiratory failure, and consciousness, not a nap." "Perhaps we should increase the dosage," Blix suggested hesitantly. "The current dose would kill 3 humans." Dorn snapped back. "I don't understand. Her physiology isn't responding according to any predictable model." Vrax stared at the calmly resting human, a growing sense of unease spreading through his thorax. Could the intelligence about the Phoenix Protocol have something to do with this unexpected response? Even if she has some genetic modifications, no biological system should be able to simply ignore a targeted neurotoxin. Dorn was practically shrieking now, all scientific composure abandoned. "Lower your voice, specialist," Vrax commanded. "We need to reassess our approach. Clearly, something about this human is different." "Different? Different?" Dorn jabbed a tentacle at the display. "She's taking a nap. after ingesting enough toxin to paralyze a Jovian elephant. This isn't different. This is impossible. They all fell silent as Rivera shifted slightly in her sleep, adjusting her position against the tree while maintaining a grip on her weapon. Her biosigns had stabilized at levels only slightly elevated from her baseline. "What do we do now, General?" Klaatu finally asked, all earlier bravado gone from his voice. Vrax's mandibles clicked nervously. For the first time in his distinguished military career, he didn't have an immediate answer. Precisely 47 minutes after closing her eyes, Sergeant Rivera snapped awake. Not gradually, not with the disorientation typical of humans rousing from sleep, but with immediate and complete alertness that sent a chill through Vrax's exoskeleton. Biosigns spiking, Blix reported unnecessarily. They could all see the readings. Heart rate increasing to this can't be right 130 beats per minute. Temperature rising to 38.2 Celsius. Rivera stood up in one fluid motion, her movements showing none of the weakness or discoordination the toxin should have induced. Instead, she rolled her shoulders, cracked her neck, and scanned her surroundings with laser-focused intensity. Her expression had transformed from the mild annoyance they'd observed earlier into something far more concerning. Fury. Cold, calculating fury. "What is happening?" Dorn whispered, his tentacles coiled tightly against his thorax in distress. She should be incapacitated. The toxin concentration in her system is still at 82%. Rivera reached down, picked up a handful of dirt, and examined it closely before letting it filter through her fingers. She then checked her wrist device, tapped it several times, and frowned. "Is she running diagnostics?" Klaatu asked in disbelief. "Impossible," Dorn insisted. "Human technology can't possibly detect our compound." But Rivera seemed to have reached a conclusion. She looked directly at her canteen, then in one abrupt motion, hurled it away from her with impressive force. "She knows," Vrax stated flatly. "Somehow, she knows she's been poisoned." Their dismay intensified as Rivera unclipped a small pouch from her belt, produced a compact medical kit, and removed what appeared to be an auto-injector. "What is that device?" Vrax demanded. "Standard human emergency medical equipment," Blix replied, her voice unsteady. "But it shouldn't counteract our toxin. Our compound was specifically designed to resist their conventional antidotes." Rivera stabbed the injector into her thigh without hesitation. The effect was immediate and horrifying. Her biosigns, already elevated, began to climb to levels that should have been impossible for human physiology. Heart rate 165 and rising. Blood oxygen levels increasing beyond baseline. Muscular electrical activity intensifying. Adrenal output off the charts, Blix reported, her voice rising in pitch with each reading. "General, this isn't just recovery she's enhancing." Dorn was frantically analyzing the data, his scientific curiosity temporarily overriding his fear. "The toxin, it's not breaking down, it's transforming? Something in her system is converting our compound into a stimulant. The molecular structure is being reconfigured at the cellular level." The Phoenix Protocol, Vrax realized with dawning horror. It wasn't just genetic enhancement, they've modified her entire biochemistry to weaponize toxins against the attacker. On the display, Rivera finished packing away her medical kit and drew her sidearm. She checked the charge, adjusted the settings, and then performed something truly chilling. She smiled. Not the pleasant expression humans used in social situations, but the predatory baring of teeth that their evolutionary ancestors had employed before a hunt. "We need to abort the mission immediately," Blix urged, backing away from the display, as if the human might reach through it. "We'll call for emergency extraction before she." "We will do no such thing," Vrax snapped, though his mandibles were clicking rapidly with stress. "We are elite Galatean operatives. We will not flee from a single human, regardless of whatever primitive biological tinkering they've done." "With respect, General," Klaatu interjected, The subject is showing signs consistent with hunters, not prey. She's not running. She's preparing to track. As if to confirm this assessment, Rivera bent down to examine the ground more carefully, then looked up in the exact direction of their hidden observation post, despite the impossibility of her detecting it. She can't possibly know our location, Vrax insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. The stealth field renders us completely invisible to human senses. The human's predatory smile widened as she checked her weapon once more and began moving toward them with purposeful strides. Maintain stealth protocols and initiate tactical withdrawal, Vrax ordered, his previously confident tone now clipped and tense. Move in sections. Klaatu, take point. Blix, monitor her biosigns. Dorn, collect all research materials. Leave nothing behind. The elite Galatean squad abandoned their observation post with practiced efficiency, moving through the dense purple foliage of NGC 4414 billion in formation. Their retreat was textbook perfect, silent, coordinated, and completely invisible to standard detection methods. It should have been enough. She's moving faster than our models predicted, Blix reported, her gaze fixed on the portable tracker. Heading directly toward our position at 17 kilometers per hour? That's not possible. Humans can't maintain that speed through forest terrain. Apparently this one can, Vrax snarled. Increase pace. We need to reach the secondary command post before she. General, Klaatu interrupted, pointing to their rear scanner. She's altering course to intercept. It's as if she can track our stealth field somehow. Vrax felt a sensation he hadn't experienced since his cadet days. Genuine alarm. Impossible. Our field generators bend light and sound around us. It's undetectable without. Thermal disruption, Dorn muttered, falling slightly behind as he struggled to secure his research equipment. The stealth field creates a slight temperature differential with the surrounding environment. Too subtle for standard human perception, but if her enhancements include improved infrared vision. Split up, Vrax commanded suddenly. Divergent paths to rendezvous point Delta. If she can somehow track us, let's see her track 4 separate signatures. The squad separated, each taking a different route through the alien forest. Vrax activated his personal recorder as he moved, determined to document everything for high command, even as a growing part of him wondered if this message would ever reach them. Operation Swift Victory Update. The human subject has demonstrated unexpected resistance to our neurotoxin compound. Not only resistance adaptation, the toxin appears to have triggered some form of enhancement protocol within her system. We are currently executing strategic repositioning. A panicked transmission from Dorn cut through Vrax's recording. She's pursuing me. How is she? I implemented 7 direction changes. This defies all human tracking capabilities. Maintain communication discipline, Vrax hissed back. Continue to evade and... The transmission from Dorn abruptly cut off, replaced by a burst of static and a sound that turned Vrax's hemolymph cold. A human female's voice. Hello there, little scientist, came the unnervingly cheerful voice of Sergeant Rivera. Don't worry about calling your friends. They'll be joining us soon enough. Emergency extraction request. Vrax barked into his communicator, attempting to reach their orbital support vessel. Priority override Crimson. Authentication code Vrax 97 Thalys Omicron. Only static answered him. Comms are being jammed, Klaatu reported, his usually steady voice now trembling slightly. Some kind of localized interference pattern, highly sophisticated. Impossible, Vrax insisted, the word beginning to lose all meaning. Human technology is inferior to. She's using our own communication array against us. Blix cut in, her analysis software finally identifying the signal pattern. She somehow reconfigured Dorn's equipment to broadcast a counter frequency. A new transmission broke through their comms, this one clearly intentional. Thanks for the fancy toys, Rivera's voice came through, sounding remarkably conversational. Your communication encryption was actually pretty impressive. Took me almost 2 minutes to crack it. Oh, and your little green drink? My med scanner says it's quite the exotic cocktail. My biochemistry research team is going to have a field day with this sample. Vrax and his remaining team members exchanged horrified glances. She's not just a soldier, Klaatu whispered. Intelligence grossly misclassified her capabilities. The Phoenix Protocol, Blix added, her voice hollow. It must be far more extensive than mere physical enhancement. Vrax tried again to contact their support vessel, this time on all emergency frequencies. Nothing but static and occasionally, disturbingly, the sound of Sergeant Rivera humming a jaunty tune. We've severely underestimated the adaptability of human physiology, Vrax reluctantly recorded for his mission log, and their psychological resilience. Despite being targeted with a lethal neurotoxin, the subject appears to be treating this as some form of recreational activity. The unmistakable sound of Galatean distress signals suddenly erupted from Blix's direction, approximately 40 meters to Vrax's right. Then silence. Lieutenant Blix, report status immediately, Vrax demanded. Rivera's voice answered instead. Lieutenant Blix is taking a little break. Don't worry, I'm being much nicer to her than you all were planning to be to me. 2 down, 2 to go. Ready or not, here I come. This is General Vrax, update to Operation Swift Victory log. Vrax panted as he scrambled through the underbrush, abandoning all pretense of tactical movement. The situation has evolved unfavorably. Major Klaatu and I are implementing contingency protocols and retreating to our primary base camp where defensive systems can be. Where are you going? He watched in disbelief as Klaatu suddenly changed direction, breaking away from their planned route. Sorry, General, Klaatu called back. Splitting up increases survival probability. Our elementary tactics. You coward. Return to formation immediately. Vrax shrieked, but Klaatu had already disappeared into the dense vegetation. Alone now, Vrax resumed his desperate recording. Specialist Dorn and Lieutenant Blix have been temporarily separated from the unit. Major Klaatu is conducting a diversionary maneuver. The lies tasted bitter even to himself. I am proceeding to base camp to coordinate our counter-offensive. A loud crash and a distinctly UN Galatean yelp sounded from the direction Klaatu had fled. Then silence. Correction, Vrax whispered into his recorder. I am the only remaining operational member of the mission team. He increased his pace, 6 limbs working frantically as he abandoned his remaining equipment to reduce weight. The base camp was only 2 kilometers ahead. Its automated defense systems might actually stand a chance against one human, no matter how enhanced. A familiar voice crackled through his communication implant. You know what's funny about your stealth tech? Rivera asked conversationally. It works great against visual detection, pretty decent against sound, but it generates this fascinating electromagnetic bubble. To the right sensors, you might as well be running around with flares strapped to your back. Vrax didn't respond, focusing instead on reaching the camp. She was toying with him. Psychological warfare. A primitive tactic beneath a superior Galatean officer. Your friends are very informative, Rivera continued cheerfully. Especially after I started examining your equipment in front of them. You should see how upset the tentacled one got when I started taking apart that precious toxin synthesizer. Kept squealing about irreplaceable Galatean technology and priceless scientific advancements while I was just, smashing stuff with rocks. Despite himself, Vrax let out a hiss of outrage. That device represents 20 years of xenobiological research. Rivera's laugh was genuinely amused. Oh, there you are. Was wondering when you'd join the conversation. Don't worry about your fancy poison maker. I took detailed scans before I let your scientist watch me dismantle it. Our engineers will probably have an improved version built within a week. The perimeter of the base camp finally came into view. Vrax activated his emergency beacon, triggering the camp's automatic defense protocols. Force fields snapped into place, automated sentry turrets emerged from concealed positions, and proximity alarms activated throughout the perimeter. Finally protected, Vrax allowed himself a moment of relief. "Your pursuit ends here, human," he broadcast, some of his confidence returning. "This installation is equipped with Class 4 defensive systems. Even with your enhancements, you cannot penetrate a Galatean military-grade force field." "About those force fields," Rivera's voice replied, now coming from the camp's internal communication system. "Interesting design. Very sophisticated harmonic oscillation pattern. Almost impenetrable." Vrax froze, his compound eyes darting around the seemingly secure camp. "Almost?" "Almost," Rivera confirmed, and then casually walked through the main entrance as the force field deactivated before her. She wore a standard human combat uniform, now supplemented with pieces of Galatean equipment strapped haphazardly to her belt. In one hand, she held a scanner clearly salvaged from Dorn's research kit. In the other, she casually twirled what Vrax recognized with horror as the camp's central security control rod. "Looking for this?" she asked, holding up the rod. "Found it about 20 minutes ago when I first arrived at your camp. Really should have changed those access codes from the factory defaults." The automated turrets swiveled toward Vrax instead of the intruder. "You can't possibly understand how to operate Galatean security systems," Vrax protested, backing away from both Rivera and the turrets. "The interface requires specialized neural patterns that humans don't." "You'd be amazed what you can figure out with a little motivation," Rivera interrupted, tapping the scanner against her thigh. "Being poisoned is quite the incentive for rapid learning." Vrax drew himself up to his full height, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "I am Supreme Tactical Commander Vrax of the Galatean Dominion. I demand to be treated according to interstellar conventions regarding captured military personnel." Rivera raised an eyebrow. "Funny, I don't recall you planning to extend me the same courtesy." In fact, she consulted the scanner. "According to this data, you were planning to keep me paralyzed indefinitely for extensive biological experimentation. Not very sporting." "We are at war," Vrax declared. "No, we're not," Rivera corrected calmly. "At least, not officially. What we have here is an unauthorized incursion into Alliance territory and an unprovoked attack on military personnel. Or as we call it back home, a really, really bad career move." She gestured to the communication array. "I've already sent a full report to my command. A retrieval team is on the way. They're particularly interested in your neurotoxin research." Vrax slumped in defeat. "What are you going to do with me?" Rivera's smile was not comforting. "First, you're going to help me round up your friends. Then you're going to tell me everything about your mission, your superiors, and especially that fascinating toxin. And then," she paused dramatically, "I'm going to make you famous." "Famous?" Vrax asked, confusion temporarily overriding his fear. "Oh yes," Rivera nodded. "The first documented case of a Galatean Special Forces team being captured by a single human soldier after failing to poison her. The diplomatic fallout alone will be spectacular. I imagine you'll be quite the celebrity back home, though perhaps not in the way you hoped." Vrax could only stare in horror as the human casually accessed their secure communication system and began broadcasting. "Is this recording properly?" "The light should be pulsing if it's working," Rivera said, adjusting the Galatean holocamera she had mounted on a tripod. Behind her, the 3 captured aliens sat in a neat row, secured with their own restraint technology. Dorn's tentacles were curled in misery, Blick stared at the ground, and Klaatu kept shooting accusatory glances at Vrax. "For the official Alliance record," Rivera continued with mock formality, "this is Sergeant Maggie Rivera, documenting the capture of a Galatean Special Forces team that attempted to neutralize me using an experimental neurotoxin. She turned to face her prisoners. General Vrax, would you care to explain your mission objectives for posterity? Vrax's mandibles clicked furiously, but with the security rod pointed at him, he had little choice. Operation Swift Victory was designed to test a new non-lethal compound for subduing human combatants without damaging infrastructure. And how would you rate the success of this operation? Rivera asked, unable to keep the amusement from her voice. Catastrophic failure, Vrax muttered, his compound eyes fixed on the ground. Speak up for the recording, please, Rivera prompted. Catastrophic failure. Vrax repeated, louder this time. Though I maintain the fault lies not with our operational planning but with the unprecedented biological anomalies presented by this particular human specimen. Rivera laughed. You mean because your poison didn't work on me? Yeah, that must have been quite the surprise. She walked over to a small case she had assembled, filled with vials of the green neurotoxin she had collected from around the camp. My science team is going to be thrilled with these samples. We've been trying to perfect the Phoenix protocol for years, but the enhancement activators we've been working with had too many side effects. Enhancement activators? Dorn perked up despite his situation, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his humiliation. The Phoenix protocol alters human biochemistry to convert certain toxins into combat stimulants, Rivera explained casually. But we've never found a compound that triggers the conversion so effectively without negative side effects. Until now. You allowed yourself to be poisoned, Vrax realized with dawning horror. You identified our ambush and deliberately consumed the toxin. Rivera shrugged. I detected your stealth field fluctuations during my first patrol circuit. Decided to see what you were up to. When my sensors picked up unknown compounds in the water supply, I thought, why not? Worst case scenario, my implants neutralize it. Best case scenario. She gestured to the captured aliens and their dismantled camp. Alliance Command will never allow the weaponization of our research, Vrax declared, though without much conviction. Of course not, Rivera agreed with exaggerated sincerity. That would be unethical. We'll simply reverse engineer it as a rapid response medical stimulant for troops in emergency situations. Completely defensive application. Vrax slumped in defeat as Rivera finished her recording and prepared the prisoners for transport. 3 weeks later, aboard the Galatean command vessel Indomitable Will, a thoroughly disgraced General Vrax stood at attention before the Supreme Military Council, his official report displayed for all to see. In conclusion, Vrax said, his voice devoid of its former confidence, I must strongly advise against further covert operations against human military personnel. Despite their obvious physiological disadvantages, they possess an alarming capacity for adaptation and improvisation that renders conventional tactical approaches ineffective. Your recommendation is noted, former General Vrax, the council leader replied coldly. Anything else? Vrax hesitated, then added, intelligence reports now confirm that the Alliance has developed a new combat stimulant based on our neurotoxin research. Field tests indicate it enhances human combat effectiveness by approximately 340%. They're calling it Galatean nap. The council chamber erupted in outraged buzzing as Vrax was escorted out. His career is finished as his ill-fated mission. In his thorax pocket, he kept the message Rivera had sent to his personal communicator before his extraction. Thanks for the boost. Next time, just bring coffee.